What's going on, Maddie? What's up, Jesse? Thursday night. Randy, what a day! Yes, what a day it was. I mean, it was like literally you saw red paint on the wall, basically, all over the wall. What's going on, Chris? Yeah, I know the Vikings and the Steelers are playing. Actually, wait, hold on, wait. Let me see who's playing actually right now. What's up, Sids? What's up, Lewis? Who's actually winning this game right now? Let me see who's winning. What's up, Roger? Oh, the Vikings already scored. What? Who scored the TD? Justin Jefferson, of course. Well, welcome in, guys. Welcome in. Welcome in. Today was just a bloodfest. That was literally what you call today. Today, I will be honest with you. I mean, there's not much to necessarily chart per se tonight. I mean, for the most part, you're looking longer term for those of you that are really charting out today, because tomorrow's really just a wild card. If you probably look at anyone, if you look on Twitter, for the most part, no one necessarily has a clear direction of definitive answer where we're necessarily headed to right now, in the sense that inflation data is really going to be a major reaction based upon whether that number is really heated or it's not. All right, so I wanted to point that out first. Before I actually get into what I'm expecting and a little bit of the charts of what I think I may be looking at tomorrow. Like I said, tomorrow's more of a wild card day. So I'm not necessarily watching it specific. A few charts stood out to me. So I'll point those out to you guys so you have a picture of what I'm looking at. But going through today's price action, and I just want to clarify this so that way you know ahead of time, or moving forward rather, we had quite a bit of rapids go off this morning. So if you saw rapids this morning and they literally they triggered back to back to back, and you're like, but damn, but which rapid do I end up playing? So you could have took any of those rapids. The one thing I would say is that obviously you're following the market, whatever the market momentum is, and that was literally just a whipsaw that we had. We had a nice little push into the market open right there. It lasted, I believe, all about an hour or so, and then we got that whipsaw. So one thing that I really noticed today was that the rapids that really got a continuation, that got a follow through, was the one that actually followed the market trend. And what I mean by that is specifically the name like Lulu and Tesla. Those were the two rapids that really stood out today in terms of a follow through. The other ones you would have had to at least, you would have to been like a sniper. You got in on a wick down and you got out on a wick up. That gave you your 10% because of how fast that whipsaw was to the downside. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. But the major winner of the follow throughs was Tesla. Those Tesla Rapids, although they paid right away, those 10%, you could have looked back at Tesla at any point of the day and following the market direction, that literally paid at any point of the day. So that's what I wanted to point out as far as Tesla. And then Lulu, they did have earnings as well. If I'm not mistaken, they reported after hours today. It already came out. It was supposed to be reported tomorrow morning, but their earnings was already out this evening. But that was another one that was pretty much a steady decliner all day today. It was down about close to $9 at one point in the day. So that was another one that you could literally look back at Lulu at any point in the day. And following the market trend, that was also bearish. So big takeaway, you want to look at the rapids and maybe look back at them during the day. Those that have a convincing trend with the market trend as well. So Tesla had basically a bearish trend. So did the market have a bearish trend. So they coincided, and you saw that selling pressure just kept mounting on Tesla. Lulu, same thing. The selling pressure continued to mount on Lulu as it did on the market. So that's what I wanted to point out for you guys as far as those. But all the rapids were pretty much about your good 8 to 10% as far as that. We had the Nimbus that also came out on Facebook as well. That hit pretty early this morning within the first hour. We tr- it actually looked like it was going to break out. I know that Avery was looking at Facebook. If you followed as well, Dan was also in Facebook. He got in with the Rapids. He was looking at the Nimbus. Everyone was pretty high on that. But of course, the market really just melted it away, gave back those early gains of the day. It tried to retest for highs. So those of you that actually ended up holding, probably diamond holding it, it gave you that opportunity to just reset it if you end up caught you were caught holding. So that was a good sign. It just, of course, you saw no follow through in Facebook on that price action because of the overall market trend. So that was a good one though overall. We'll see if for whatever reason if the market does decide to rally tomorrow. Of course, Facebook will be one of those names that you want to remember. Oh look, Facebook had a Nimbus yesterday. Let me take a look at that name tomorrow morning. So that's what you want to look at. And then of course we have the unusuals, the Futu, the AT&T. I'm not so big on both of those names to be honest with you. And then also Gilead with not Gilead, Gold, GLD. That was another one. They went out pretty far on some unusual puts on that one. Being that gold is not seeming like a safe haven right now, they're bearish on it. I can understand it. Again, those are usually they're usually a swing, but you can get a nice quick 10 to 15% off of that. And then they also had the MDB that was unusual as well for next week. And I believe that one was actually just bleeding. That was a bleeder. It literally went straight down. So you had an opportunity to also scalp that one as well. All right. So those were the alerts today. But big takeaway, the rapids that actually follow the market trend itself. Those are the ones that you had an opportunity to go back and make profits even during the day, not just when it first came out. All right. So I wanted to point that out. Going into and Randy, Um, yeah, that's what I was actually going to get into, Randy, because looking into the inflation data tomorrow morning, everyone's pretty much expecting a hot number. And I did touch bases yesterday night when I said that I expected the market to go green to red. I believe I actually said that on live last night, in which the market will likely go green to red, in which the market's going to possibly price in whatever bad CPI data is going to be tomorrow for inflation, or either we end up running steaming hot right into inflation data. So obviously we went green to red. So it seems like we're pricing in some of that action. But then again, that you're having to look at the taper side of this effect. So it all depends how hot that number comes in tomorrow. And I haven't looked at the estimates or so forth just yet. I'll look at that probably early tomorrow morning before that data comes in to see what the estimate is and then see how hot it's possibly expected to be. But if that number is really higher than what we expect, then of course that's going to accelerate the tapering. And that's where we're going to have to see how the market's going to digest that information basically. Is the market really going to take this as a bad sign for all those high multiple name stocks, in which it's really going to continue this bloodbath that we have today? Or is the market going to take it in a good sense that, all right, I mean, the Fed is going to have this under control? And by the way, we actually have the Fed stepping in next week as well into OPEX week. So that's another kind of spook fear factor right there that we also have. So even though today's price action, it seemed healthy to me, it seemed like a good drop, it seemed like it was actually anticipating the data tomorrow. I'm not yet fully here to say that it's going to be fully priced in. So that's what I'll leave you with as far as what my expectation is. But like I said, tomorrow it's gonna be either or. I mean, there's no in between. There's no sense that I can tell you, you know what, definitively we're gonna go towards highs, and today's gonna be wiped out, or we're just gonna continue the bloodbath and go straight down. It all depends on that number. And any analyst, I mean, if you see Twitter, everyone has a mixed direction on where we're necessarily going. All right. But looking real quick into Nasdaq, just my two zones that were pretty much between. Looking between dropping below 1636, 16,036, and then between 15,981. That's my zone below that I want to see if we're gonna enter into that one, in which we're gonna start to pick up steam to the downside, and then of course everyone's gonna start looking at that recent low that we had to see if the selling pressure continues to escalate, and then we drop below potentially back into my lower zone, my bear zone, which would be 15,595. That would be pretty much your bear zone in which all the bears are going to be coming out all over the place. All right, but this would be a healthy pullback if we end up at least holding this zone here of right around that threshold of 16,000 on Nasdaq. That would continue to be a healthy pullback. We could possibly drop as low as 15,847, in which that would still be a healthy pullback. But if we even go next to the lows here, you're gonna see that the bear it's gonna be in bear territory basically is what I would say. Here would just be if we get retrace about half of this little descending channel that we have, that'll be a healthy pullback. In the sense that the market's going to say, okay, inflation's not going to be as bad as what we're expecting, and then we can reverse easily off of that. But if we end up testing that low, then it's going to be bear market all over again, in which you're going to see all the bears come back right back out. All right. But one thing that also stood out was today, going into today actually, was the little double top. That's why you see I have that green line right there, and that's what actually signaled that downside. We did have a double top. If you remember, and I'll actually get into S&P here now as well, since I just told you my zones for that. You also had that double top action here on S&P feeds as well. And if you remember yesterday when I told you that I had this big ascending megaphone action going on, that was the resistance that we wicked off of. That's exactly what our resistance was, where we wicked off of the prior support that we had. We wicked off of it, double topped, and that's what caused this selling pressure to the downside. All right. So two levels I'm watching right here, well I should say one level and then also a zone, is holding S&P feuds right around 46.24. If we drop below 46.24, then I'm looking into my zone that I had prior, which was 45.96, down to as low as 45.82. All right, so that'll be the two levels that I'm watching, well, level and the zone that I'm watching, in which I would hope and intend that we end up holding there, in which that's our healthy pullback zone. Otherwise, if we end up breaking below this mid zone that you have in the middle here, then we're going to test the lows, and again, that's where the bear market story is going to start to come into play. You're going to see all the bear charts start to come out. All right. Going in real quick into a few charts that just stood out to me. One was Netflix. I know that this one's really been a bleeder. Ever since we hit 700 on this ticker, it's really just been a waterfall to the downside. It actually looks a little bit like an impulse wave to the downside. Wave 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is going to be our wave 5 that we're likely going to get a flush out to the downside. That's what I would anticipate it looks like. But what's really standing out to me on a larger time frame here on the 4 hour specifically is the little bear flag, little rising wedge action that you have going on right now, in which we broke down from it. So I expect further decline on Netflix, even if the other cues really show strength. Netflix is one of those that continues to show that weakness. It did break down as well. So we'll see a continuation to the downside. What I actually have, and if I actually go out, I think to the daily, probably shows you a little bit better. But if you notice here, this was a prior high. This is where we made this massive cup and handle action. I would expect it to retest that where we broke out from that cup and handle, and which will come down to about 593 to retest here. And then it's entirely possible if we continue to break below 593, then we're gonna go for the wick fill here, and this will be 576. I don't expect to get below 576, but last resort would be breaking down towards 568. That would be the very last resort, I would expect. All right. Other than that, the other name I was watching was JPM in particular. This one actually just stood out to me. I believe it stood out a little bit more better on the weekly chart in terms of just a beautiful falling wedge action. If you see right now, that falling wedge on JPM on the weekly chart just looks so uniform right now. It looks like it's waiting to break out. That actually may be intriguing with the data tomorrow. So this may be one that you want to watch. Banks could actually rally off of inflation data tomorrow, being that tapering is going to be the highlight, and tapering is actually going to be healthy for the banks. So that's something you want to watch, particularly JPM. Of course, you can probably watch any of the banks, but this specific pattern actually stands out to me the most. Just looks so beaten up on the weekly here. Beautiful little falling wedge action. I did see some flow coming in as well through today, but targeting this one towards 165. I want to say ballpark number will be 166, in which that will be resistance for me. So I will target this one to 166. We'll likely see this one get a nice little breakout tomorrow, if indeed that inflation data is going to pretty much benefit the banks as I expect it does. All right. Another one, and you probably heard the name drop on Disney here, but watching this one also off of the weekly just looks beautiful. We actually had that breakdown that correlates with the wick down that we had back from June. So I would expect this to get a nice little retrace towards that level, in which that's going to be right around 160. So I would pretty much expect this one to actually fill that move towards 160 by the end of the year, because as we saw, it actually held up pretty well today. So despite how the market just bled out, it showed a little bit of relative strength compared to the other names across the board. So I do like this one. This will be one, like I said, you want to get at least 3, 4 weeks out calls on this one and target out 160. So if you're looking for a potential swing trade, especially in this kind of environment, this would be a healthy one, which I say, okay, you know what? Take a flyer on and scale in on a swing position on Disney. Because the mouse actually held up through the bloodbath. Of course, you want to see how the price actions tomorrow. If we do continue to bleed, give it a chance, see how it actually reacts compared to the overall market. You want to see how that relative strength continues going into tomorrow if we do have overall market weakness. All right. Another one was also Starbucks, and I think someone in chat actually name dropped it as well. What up, Tatum? Someone actually name dropped Starbucks, but this actually just has a beautiful little inverted head and shoulders action. It just looks beautiful off of the weekly. So as you see, I'm looking at larger time frames, and that's why I mentioned with this bloodbath, with CPI data tomorrow, you're not necessarily looking for price action just for tomorrow. You're looking potentially for longer term plays, longer expiration, and this is why I'm showing you charts like Disney, like JPM off the weekly, now Starbucks off the weekly. Beautiful inverted head and shoulders action, and targeting a prior resistance here of 120.76. And as you see, it's wicked off of 120.76 twice. So that's the level I would target here up to 120. That's about a good $4 and change move that you're looking at, in which you can get a good 2 to 3 week swing play out of Starbucks here on this potential move. So I like this one. I would say ideally to get a confirmation on this breakout, ideally I would want to see a full body candle out of this neckline. That would be ideal. This man just said go Cowboys, and we had the Steelers and the Vikings playing. Tatum, are you serious, my guy? But again, ideally, I would want to see a full body candle out of the neckline. But I do like the scenario here. As you see, it showed a little bit of relative strength compared to the overall market here. So I don't mind scaling in. Once we get that confirmation, then would add to the position as well. So that's how you could potentially play it. You scale in now, and then once you get that full body wick out of the neckline here, above that neckline, then you can add to the position. So that's what I would tell you as well. Another potential swing play. This one, RTX, this one's a little bit more different. I don't think anyone is really too familiar with this name, but it's in the aerospace area. I just like it has a little megaphone action going on. Looking to see this one get right over prior resistance as you've seen. That's been a prior resistance level. Getting over ballpark number will be 90. We want to see this one get over the 90, and then we'll feel that move towards resistance of this megaphone action, in which will make a push towards 88. So this is a beautiful one. I do like this one. This is another one showed a little bit more strength compared to the overall market. That was a bloodbath. So this is just another name in which as another potential swing that you want to look at. But you ideally you want to see this break over 90. Over 90, then you're targeting this one towards 95. All right. And then the last name that I wanted to post here was UPS, and you probably heard Avery mentioning about UPS. But just giving you the formation here is you have a beautiful inverted head and shoulders potentially. Uh, it's in the process of confirming this right shoulder. That's what you're really waiting on that confirmation. Ideally, you want to see this get that break right over the mark over 213. That will give you the confirmation here of this right shoulder. And then you'll get that break over that neckline in which you're going to go test the high here of 220 to target. So over 213, I'll look at 220 here. Just waiting a little bit on the confirmation for this right shoulder, but I don't mind scaling in here on this position. As you see, you have pretty good relative strength here compared to the overall market. So that's the key that you see that I'm highlighting. Looking at relative strength names compared to what's really been a bloodbath today. All right. But that's all the names that really just stood out to me. And as you see, I'm looking at larger time frames again. I'm not necessarily looking at smaller time frames. I'm not trying to predict tomorrow's price action. We can literally swing either direction tomorrow. Just depends how hot that CPI data is going to be tomorrow. All right. But hopefully that kind of gives you. Yeah, UPS is a slow mover, but that's why I'm looking more so at swing plays right now. I sound like a robot. My bad for that. I think I sound better, but testing. Someone give me the okay. But if you didn't hear what I just said, if I was on robot there. Again, I'm not looking to actually look at tomorrow's price action necessarily to time upside or downside in tomorrow's action. We'll see how hot the CPI data is, but I would rather look for swing plays because again, we also have next week is just going to be a brutal week. I will say that right now ahead of time. And actually, since yeah, you won't hear me tomorrow going into the weekend, but next week is really going to be a brutal week. Having the Feds plus OPEC's week is really going to be brutal. And that's why you see that I'm looking at weekly time frames. I'm not looking at 15 minutes, hourly, or even 4 hour for that matter. I'm looking for weekly time frames. I'm looking for potential swing plays. I'm looking for literally, if you see that I'm pretty much going out to like Dow stocks. I'm not necessarily looking at tech for the most part, other than Netflix to the downside that really has already broken its uptrend. I'm looking for swing plays potentially going into a brutal week next week. And that's what I wanted to make sure that I get my point across right now going into the weekend here. So if you're looking to get a position tomorrow, even if it's a bloodbath tomorrow, you're looking at those potential plays where I have a weekly breakout potential, like the names that I'm showing you right now. Disney weekly reversal, JPM weekly breakout of a falling wedge, Starbucks weekly inverted head and shoulders, RTX weekly megaphone action, and then UPS you have a weekly inverted head and shoulders. So everything I'm looking at is a weekly basis in which you're not trying to day trade all this volatility or all this chop that we're gonna have next week. You're looking for potential swing plays. All right, so that's the highlight that I wanted to give you guys tonight. So I'm not necessarily gonna look at tech stocks tonight. So I'll point that out. But we'll see what the market gives us tomorrow. After tomorrow, then we'll see what newsletter plays really stand out for us. As you see, weekly plays will likely be the highlight of the weekend because we're not going to really necessarily point out stocks that are going to get hit by volatility next week. At least that's going to be what we're going to try to avoid on the newsletter because we'll see exactly how the market digests the data tomorrow, and then we'll be able to determine what plays really stand out for us next week. But other than that, I'll leave you guys with that. It's a short night. CPI data is going to be very key for market direction. So there's not much to really go off of to say, you know what, look at this chart and I'm going to tell you it's going to go exactly here. I can't necessarily tell you that because tomorrow, again, key day, it could be another bloodbath or we can end up rallying and, taper is going to be something of the past. And Feds are probably going to show that, you know what, we're not going to taper right now based upon CPI data. So it's a flip of a coin right now. That's what I will say right now. I'll leave you guys with that. But other than that, hopefully none of you are actually holding a position. I would assume that most of you are cash. That's what I would hope. Because tomorrow, again, flip of a coin, you don't want to have to wake up to a red position. All right. Other than that, though, I'll leave you guys with that. We'll see what the algos actually give us tomorrow. Again, those of you that didn't hear me in the beginning, hopefully my biggest takeaway for all of you was the fact that of the rapids. Make sure that you're actually paying attention to rapids that follow the market trend. If we have a bloodbath tomorrow, pay attention to the put rapids, because not only are they going to pay 10% within the first few minutes of that alert going off, but they could also end up paying out, like Tesla bleeding all day today, like Lulu pretty much bleeding for the most part of the day. So that's what I'll leave you with. Try to follow up on those rapids that actually follow the market trend, and that'll likely be your friend to really trade through the entire day. For those of you that really want to make day trades tomorrow, all right. But I'll leave you with that. You guys have a good night, and those of you who are watching football, enjoy. I'll see you guys on live tomorrow morning, and we'll see where the CPI data takes us. Either we're going north or we're about to go to hell. All right. You guys have a good night, okay, guys?